I've invested in cards for almost 20 years, and I've worked with hundreds of card investors at every level of the market. And after seeing the same patterns play out over and over again, I've broken down the entire journey into 5 levels. And in this video, we're gonna walk through what each one feels like, where people get stuck, and how to break through so you can identify exactly where you are and understand what it's gonna take to reach the next level. Now, as we go through, I want you to be honest with yourself and figure out which level you're actually at. A problem well defined is a problem half solved. So if you can figure out where you are, it's going to be a lot easier to figure out what you need to do. And remember, there's nothing wrong with being level 1 or 2 or even 3. Everyone in this market starts from 0, so we've all been there. And the goal is simply to know where you are so you can focus on getting to the next level. All right, let's dive into this. So level 1 is the Explorer. So the defining question for the Explorer is, where do I even start? And here's what it feels like when you're stuck in level 1. So you've seen people making money with cards and you're interested in getting involved, but the market feels overwhelming. It feels like everybody already knows something you don't. People throw around terms you've never heard before. They're talking about grading and comps and raw cards, pop reports, prospecting, liquidity, eye appeal. And you're just trying to figure out what any of it actually means. Every video you watch seems to assume you already know the basics, so instead of feeling more confident, you often leave feeling even more confused than you were when you started. The market feels intimidating because there is no instruction manual. Nobody hands you a roadmap that says start here. So ultimately, you're excited by the possibilities, you just don't know where to start. Now, the primary problem for level 1 is there's no framework, and the trap here is analysis paralysis. You spend so much time looking for information that you never actually take action. Now, here's the hidden truth for the Explorer. You don't need more information. You need a foundation. You just need the right information. So just enough to get you started, and then much of the learning can happen along the way from there. Now, here's what it feels like to actually break through. You finally stop trying to learn everything and just start building a basic understanding of how the market works. Because right now, it's kind of like you're trying to solve a puzzle without knowing what the big picture even looks like. So once you understand the basics, everything starts making a lot more sense, and that gives you enough to at least step through the threshold. Now, the new reality and what it feels like once you've actually broken through here is you're going to stop asking, where do I start? And you're going to start asking, which direction should I go? And if you're stuck in the Explorer phase, here's what I'd recommend as a next step. So go watch some beginner-friendly educational content and build that foundation. And keep in mind, you don't need all of the information. You just need enough to understand the basics of how the market works so you can get started without making a bunch of mistakes immediately. Now, if you want, I've got a full crash course video on YouTube that breaks down the basics of how the market works, some of the core strategies, and it'll give you that strong foundation to build on moving forward so you can stop feeling so overwhelmed and just start moving in the right direction. It looks something like this, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. All right, let's talk about level 2. So level 2 is the Experimenter. So the defining question for the Experimenter is, how do I know which direction to go? So here's what it feels like if you're stuck in level 2. This is where you've stopped sitting on the sidelines and you've started taking action. So maybe you've graded a few cards, maybe you've bought a prospect or two, maybe you've tried flipping collections. The problem is that every opportunity sounds exciting. Someone on YouTube says grading is the best way to make money. Someone else is trying to buy at 70% of market value to make quick flips. And then you see someone post a huge sale and suddenly you're over there researching that exact player. And because you don't know what actually matters yet, it's so easy to get pulled in a dozen different directions all at the same time. So you end up buying random cards, chasing stale opportunities that really aren't there anymore, and just trying strategies that sound promising without really having any kind of plan. And you're making mistakes all over the place simply because you don't know any better. And every time a new opportunity comes along or you see a new strategy, it pulls your attention somewhere else before you've even given the last one a real chance. So ultimately, you're still trying to figure out where you fit in the market. Now, the primary problem for the Explorer here is no clarity. And the trap is that you're trying to work too many strategies at once. It seems like, hey, there's money on the table over here, 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 and here. So why don't I just go and pursue them all and see which one sticks? But what ends up happening is when you're dividing your attention and your focus in so many different directions, you're not putting enough focus on any of them, so none of them end up working. And so the hidden truth here is that you're never going to get enough reps to become good at something if you're constantly switching directions and letting your attention be divided. Now, the breakthrough, what does it feel like when you've actually broken through? What do you need to do? So you stop searching for the perfect strategy and you commit to a direction long enough to actually learn it. Because until you get enough reps, you'll never know if the strategy is the problem or if you're the problem. And there are lots of ways to win with cards, guys. Some are better than others, but many of them can work. The problem is you're trying to learn them all at once. So you're trying to replicate someone's strategy that you saw on social media, but they're over here putting 100% of their focus into that strategy to make it work, while you're putting 10% of your focus into 10 different things. And then you're wondering why your results don't look like theirs. So the key breakthrough is you've got to start thinking deep, not wide. Now, how do you know you've graduated from this level? So the new reality is you stop asking, what strategy should I pursue? And you start saying, this is the strategy I'm building around. The key is simply committing to something and sticking with it. Now, if this sounds like you and you identify with the experimenter and you're all over the place at all times and you feel like, man, maybe I should hone it in a little bit, here's what I'd recommend as a next step. Pick a lane and commit to it long enough to actually learn it. And if you'd like help thinking through which of the strategies out there aligns best with your goals, I've got another video that breaks down 15 proven ways to make money with cards. And more importantly, it explains what's good and bad about each strategy. And then it gets into why some of the strategies are actually more repeatable than others, so you can identify which one makes the most sense for you. It looks something like this, and I'll leave a link in the description to this one as well for you level 2s. All right, let's talk about level 3. And this is actually my favorite of the levels because I spent a long time here myself many years ago, so I resonate with this one deeply. But when I broke through level 3 is when I actually started getting the kind of results that I had always wanted. So level 3 is the grinder. And the defining question for the grinder is, why am I not getting the kind of results that I know that I'm capable of? Now, here's what it feels like to be stuck in level 3. Level 3 is actually where most card investors get stuck, and it's probably the most frustrating level in the market because by this point, you've already put in the work. You've watched videos to try to learn, you've bought cards, sold cards, maybe you've even submitted some grading orders. You've probably even had a few nice sales, maybe even some wins, and you know that money can be made in this market. So that's not the problem anymore. The problem is that your results still aren't where you want them to be. You submit cards that you think are going to grade well, but you end up with a bunch of 8s and 9s, or even worse, you get 10s but hardly make anything on them. Or maybe you've made decisions that felt right at the time, only to realize that you completely swung and missed on the timing. It feels like you're constantly taking one step forward and then 2 steps back, and you can't figure out why. You watch other people have success with strategies that you've tried and failed at yourself, and you're genuinely happy for them, but part of you can't help but wonder, what do they know that I don't? What am I missing? Why can't I seem to put all the pieces together? Because at this point, effort's not the problem, guys. You're willing to learn, you're willing to buy, sell, grade, put in the time. The problem is that you still don't know which actions actually move the needle and which ones are just keeping you busy. And that's what makes this level so difficult. You don't feel far away. You actually feel like you're really close, but somehow that makes it even more frustrating because deep down, you know you're capable of more. You know if other people can make money with cards, there's gotta be a way for you to figure it out too. But you just haven't figured out what's missing yet. And you know success is possible, so every day you're forced to ask yourself the same question. Why am I not getting the results that deep down I know I'm capable of? Now, the primary problem for the grinder is that you don't yet understand what actually drives results. You may be able to take action on a strategy and replicate it, but you don't understand the underlying principles. So the trap here is focusing on tactics instead of principles and copying actions without understanding why they work. Now, the hidden truth here is that success doesn't come from copying what works, it comes from understanding why it works. And the investors who consistently win understand the principles underneath the strategies. And that's what makes this level so difficult, and it's why so many people get stuck at level 3. Information can be learned quickly, but truly understanding and internalizing the why takes so much longer. So the breakthrough here, what does it actually feel like when you break through? Well, you stop asking, what should I do? And you start understanding, why does this work? Because once you understand what actually drives results, you can apply those principles over and over again in all different situations. And suddenly the market starts making a whole lot more sense. You're able to go beyond just following strategies because you're developing actual judgment. And that is when you become dangerous. All right, once you've broken through, the new reality is that you stop feeling confused by your results and you start understanding understanding why you're winning, why you're losing. You start understanding what matters and you start understanding what doesn't matter. And this is where you start to finally unlock the ability to build cards into an actual consistent business. Now, if you sound like a grinder, you're stuck in level 3, here's what I'd recommend as a next step. So, the reason that so many people get stuck at level 3 is because you're trying to build understanding through trial and error. And trial and error definitely works. It's how a lot of successful investors learn. It's how I learned 20 years ago. The problem is that it's painfully slow and the mistakes are expensive. So you can absolutely figure this stuff out on your own eventually, but every lesson has a cost. So whether that's time, money, or most likely both. And so the shortcut here is learning the principles underneath the strategies, because once you understand why something works, you can apply that understanding to thousands of different scenarios moving forward. And that's what takes you from random results is when you can start making consistently better decisions. And ultimately, that's what separates level 3 from level 4 and level 5. Now, if you'd like help accelerating that progress, that's what we focus on inside my card investing membership community, Ignite. So if level 3 feels like where you are and you're willing to put in the work and you're ready to break through, I'll leave a link in the description where you can join us for a week completely for free and see what you think. All right, level 4. So level 4 is the operator. So the defining question for the operator is, how do I scale my results to the next level? Here's what it feels like. You've proven that you can make money in this market. You've got strategies that work. You're consistently sending grading orders each month. You trust your judgment. And most importantly, you're no longer wondering whether success is actually possible. The problem is that what got you here isn't necessarily what's going to get you to the next level. You're still swimming in the shallow end, even though you've proven you're ready to graduate to bigger cards. And you're almost certainly still doing things yourself that could be delegated to free up your time for higher ROI actions. You've developed the skills to make hundreds of dollars per hour, but you're spending your time on $10 per hour tasks. For example, maybe you're spending 3 hours sorting and listing low dollar commons to make $30 when you could spend those same 3 hours looking for a couple high upside gradable cards that will make you $300. Big difference. So ultimately, you're still operating inside a comfort zone that's just too small for your goals. You've figured out how to make consistent money, but now the challenge is figuring out how to get leverage so you can get more for what you're already putting in. Now, the primary problem for the operator is scaling. And the trap here is spending time on activities that no longer serve you and no longer move the needle towards your now bigger goal. So the hidden truth you've got to understand is that what got you here won't necessarily get you there. Usually once you find something that works, it's smart to actually just do more of that thing instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, right? But working harder, working more can only go so far. So here's what it feels like to actually break through level 4. So you start focusing on leverage, because at this point, again, working harder can only take you so far. The goal is to get more from the effort that you're already putting in. You've always paid attention to where you were putting your money, but now you've got to start paying more attention to where you're spending your time. And you become a lot more intentional about which opportunities deserve your attention and which ones don't. By this point, you've already built the skills and the judgment to do big things in the card market, but what's holding you back is what you're actually doing with those skills and judgment. It's kind of like you built a Ferrari, but you're driving through a school zone. So if you want to get to the next level, the training wheels have to come off. Here's what the new reality feels like once you've broken through level 4. So you stop thinking small and you stop worrying so much about individual deals, and instead you start being able to zoom out and you're looking at every decision through a different lens. Is this the best and highest ROI use of my time? For the first time, you consider your hourly rate and you align your actions to optimize that number. Now, if you resonate with the operator and you think you're stuck in level 4, here's what I would recommend as a next step. So you've got to audit how you're spending your time. You've got to look for those activities that are creating the biggest results and then do more of those things. And what's even more important is looking for the activities that can be either delegated or automated or eliminated entirely and do less of those things. This is one of those situations where you get addition from subtraction. So removing things from your plate so you're not so distracted with low dollar tasks will unlock your time so you can focus on higher ROI activities. And remember, the goal isn't to work harder here. It's just to get more for the effort that you're already putting in by getting more strategic. And if it's helpful, I've got a video where I share some of my biggest learnings and transformations between my strategy year 1 of card investing versus year 20 as my approach has matured. Looks something like this, and I'll leave a link in the description for you level 4s too. All right, let's talk level 5. So level 5 is the investor. And the defining question here is, how do I continue growing and sharpening my approach? Here's what it feels like. So you've spent enough time in the market to know what works and what doesn't. You've seen opportunities succeed and others that have failed, and you've developed the judgment to tell the difference. When the right opportunity appears, you're willing to act decisively, even if it means doing something that looks uncomfortable to everyone else, like paying above comps or cutting bait and taking a loss on one card to pursue a better opportunity with another card. But just as importantly, you have the discipline to walk away from a potential deal. You don't feel pressure to chase the news because you know there's always another opportunity around the corner. You've developed an abundance mindset and see opportunities everywhere, but you also know where your edge comes from. You understand your strengths, you have a process, and you think in years, not weeks. And because of that, you continue to take consistent action because you've proven that consistent inputs lead to consistent results. At this point, you're making decisions from a place of conviction rather than excitement. And now the game is just to continue executing and sharpening your approach along the way. The primary problem for the investor is optimization, and it's really not a problem, it's just an ongoing pursuit. Now, the trap here is important to keep an eye on because the trap is ego and letting your ego get in the way and believing you've arrived and forgetting the fundamentals, because the hidden truth is that the market will humble you if you let it. Now, what about the breakthrough for level 5? What does that feel like? What does that even look like? Well, the breakthrough is just realizing that there is no finish line. There isn't one single moment. This level is a continuous pursuit of mastery. And your new reality is that you realize there's always another level. So recommended next step, stay curious, keep learning, keep adapting, keep going. All right, so those are the 5 levels. Now, I want you to be honest with yourself. Which level are you actually in? And I'm not talking about the level you want to be in or the level you think you should be in, but what's the level that you're actually in? Because once you're honest about where you are, the path forward becomes a lot clearer. One of the biggest mistakes I constantly see is when people are trying to solve level 4 problems while they haven't even mastered level 2 yet, or trying to scale before building a repeatable process. You can't do calculus before you learn basic arithmetic. So every level has a different bottleneck, and the faster you identify yours, the faster you can move past it. If you're at level 1, build that foundation. If you're at level 2, pick a direction. Level 3, focus on understanding why things work. Level 4, focus on leverage so you can scale. And if you're at level 5, stay humble and keep sharpening your approach. The goal isn't to jump straight to level 5 overnight, guys. It's just to identify where you are and take action to get one level better, and then do it again and again. And remember, profits will come and go, cards will come and go, but you are ultimately the asset you're building. The skills you learn and the strategic judgment you develop along the way are yours to keep, and building those is the real victory.